The MLS Cup playoffs begin tomorrow for the Seattle Sounders as they face off against the Houston Dynamo in round 1 of the best of 3 series. And I absolutely hate this best of 3 matches that MLS added to the playoffs. Like, what the In today's video, I'll be joined by Hector, who is the host of Insert Name FC podcast and formerly was the kit man of the Houston Dynamo Academy. You may also have seen Hector and I chop it up as panelists on Goals TV series Wake Up MLS, where on the show he always loves to say,
yeah, but Xiaoyan knows when they go to play in Portland, it just doesn't. It's a recipe.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it's a recipe for
Xiaoyan knows. You know what? Hashtag Xiaoyan
knows.
So let's see if I hashtag no in this video. Oh yeah, and by the way, I will be doing watch alongs for all of Seattle's matches in the playoffs. I already have the live set for the 2 guaranteed matches against the Dynamo. So make sure to head to those streams. I'll leave an annotation up in this video. Click the bell notification on them to be notified when I go live. So now that we got that all out the way, let's jump into the preview. Thoughts playing against the Sounders? As a Houston Dynamo fan, I think fans would love to hear what's the perspective on the other side in Texas playing against the Sounders.
Oh yeah, man. I think for starters, I think as decision day was going on, obviously it was a 1-1 draw going into like the final minutes for that LA Galaxy game, and I was kind of already accepting the fate that I think at this point Dynamo fans are just married to RSL. I feel like every significant playoff game, you know, whether it's U.S. Open Cup or I think even Leagues Cup, we had a matchup with them at some point. Like, I mean, we're just always glued to RSL in some weird sense, which I'm fine with because we always seem to find a way to prevail against them. So I was actually kind of already accepting that. But then obviously Daniel Steres comes off with a header in stoppage time to get the win. Which is funny, decision day in LA Galaxy and Dynamo, it just always pans out for the Dynamo.
I know. It's such a weird situation you guys have with the Galaxy. No matter what, you guys always have their number. Even you guys could be horrendously down bad.
And you guys ruined their season like time and time again.
Multiple times. Yeah.
Mind you, this was like the worst years of the Dynamo too. It's not like even the good Dynamo, not even like the you know, like the early years, even like that little 2008, 2011 period. Like it was just like the worst Dynamo. Like this is where now you're seeing like the stadium pretty much empty. So it's and I mean they're still trying to recover from that. It's still going to take some time for that part. But I think when Daniel Steres scored that goal and then seeing that we're going to get paired up with Seattle, 2 things came in my head. One, obviously you, Xiaoyan. I mean,
I'm glad I came to mind.
And I was like, oh shit, I get to see Xiaoyan in some extent. And secondly was just we fucking suck at Lumen Field. But this year seems a lot different for the Dynamo because this is the best road record the Dynamo have had in ever. So I think that there's some positivity about that part. But yeah, Lumen Field is a stadium where it's a beautiful stadium. Not saying anything negative about Lumen Field, but it's just something about it. It is just the worst for the Dynamo. And I mean, I mean, the last time we faced off at Lumen Field, it was actually not a bad performance from the Dynamo. No. They just gave up a goal, and that was it.
To like, Paul Rothrock. Why do you guys always concede to this guy?
I don't know. I have no idea. It's the Lumen Field effect, man.
Yeah.
You know, people complain about BC Place. I think, and I've complained about BC Place a lot as well, but at this point now, it's like Lumen Field is just. That's my Achilles heel now as a Dynamo supporter, and I never thought about it that way. But aside from that, I think it's an exciting matchup. I think 2 teams that have some fairly good playoff records. So I think that's the cool thing to see is 2 teams that are very well known in the postseason to do fairly well, go far in the playoffs. And I think this, like I said, this is a completely different Dynamo team. I think maybe they're due for 1 road win at Lumen Field. Maybe get their first win in Lumen Field could be the thing, because I think with the Dynamo, what they have this year with their defense, and that's always the thing I'm positive about with the Dynamo is that their back line is just it's phenomenal. It's just the question is the attacking side. When will they score some goals? And
I think both teams are in the same boat.
Yeah, I think as well. Like there's a lot of question marks as far as the attack goes, because I don't think you guys have like your leading goal scorer that's like by a margin, you know what I mean? I think very similar to the Dynamos, maybe more dependent on defense and just hoping they find their opening.
You talked a little bit about both these teams. They've had their struggles. They've both been good. I mean, the difference between these 2 teams this year, I believe, was only 3 points. The difference was Columbus Crew not having a goalkeeper between Seattle hosting 2 games and only Houston hosting 1. Shout out to Wilfred Nancy for not having a backup goalkeeper because that was honestly, that was the difference. It was just 3 points.
He had a backup goalkeeper. He was just a Guatemala national player. So
he just didn't have any goalkeepers at that moment. But yeah, I mean, that's the difference between the 2 teams. They're neck and neck. And I would argue this is the most, I think, unpredictable, the most difficult playoff game from round 1 to predict. Even though Seattle, yes, are the higher seed and it would make the most sense, even with Dynamo not being able to win games at Lumen Field, I still don't even think it's that straightforward because of the many factors that you just mentioned, Hector. And then on top of that with Seattle, like the people watching probably already know. And again, it's similar to Houston's problems. Seattle have not been a big game team like they have in the past. Yes, they've been able to finish into higher seeds this year and last year, but we've seen they don't have that bite like they've had 2020, pre-2020, where regardless of how they finish in the season, you know Seattle is going to show up in the playoffs. It's like they almost have lost that since post 2020. And Dynamo and Seattle have history in the playoffs. First year Seattle were in MLS, played in 09, ended 1-0. Pretty dull game, you could say, 1-0 after ET in Houston. And then obviously, I don't think you're going to want to hear this one, but the 5-0 thrashing in 2017. I mean, shout out to Houston for beating the Timbers the round prior, but they just got absolutely destroyed in that playoff game. So it's the 3rd time we face off in the playoffs. Well, how do you see this whole thing playing out? What do you think are the main issues? If you want to add on more to what we said or reiterate it, and for both teams going into this match, and which team do you think could overcome those issues in this big moment in these 3 games?
as far as the Dynamo goes, I think how healthy is Hector Herrera? I think Hector Herrera is to Dynamo the most important player on the field.
Not Carrasquilla?
Carrasquilla has stepped up. I think
Okay.
the big thing this year, I mean, obviously congratulations by the way to him for CONCACAF player of the year. But I think the reason why I put more to Ache is because when it comes down to it, he's the one that everybody looks at. Though I will say though, we were out without Ache for half the season because he went into the season with an injury. And Coco stepped up into the role that we all hoped that he was going to do last year, but he didn't. But this year he seemed to have stepped up in that role. And I think a lot of factors came into play. I think the big one was Latif Blessing coming in. I think he helps out whenever he's on the field. It kind of alleviates for a lot of things for Coco Garcia where he could just focus on his game. And I think when he's able to play his game, he's a lot more comfortable. And you see the fluidity in Coco Garcia. But I think Ache, his job would be to.
Will he be fit for these games?
Yeah, he should be fit for it. He played in the LA Galaxy game. I mean, he's still doing his recovery regimen. The guy
But he's not 90 minutes fit though.
That's where I'm kind of wondering about for him. And when he does get taken out of the game, can we see Coco Carrasquilla and Arthur and maybe Latif Blessing, or depending who they bring out? I know we saw Brooklyn Reigns for a little bit at moments this season. Could he be a name? But I think it's going to be more likely Latif going to be that guy that comes off on the bench to fill in for Ache if he does not feel he's capable of playing 90 minutes.
As an outsider looking in, what scares you about Seattle? Because I'm genuinely curious.
Lumen Field.
That's Lumen Field?
I don't know, man. There's just something in the psyche. But, like, I think what's unique about this year for the Dynamo, because of that road record that they had, the Dynamo have been notoriously bad on the road for a long time. And I think this year having to have won a lot of important games on the road. I mean, they, beating LAFC, beating, Minnesota United when they were kind of looking like a real threat in the MLS. Being able to win those crucial kind of games, I think is something that makes me a little bit more confident going into this matchup with Seattle. I'm not saying that we're going to flat out beat y'all. I don't, like you said, this is it's a coin toss. And I mean, it's fitting, right? It's the 4th and 5th seed going up against each other. But I think seeing how the Dynamo played this year, it's just, once again, it goes back to the attack. And I think Ponce scoring goals is great to see your highest signing player, score goals at the end of the day. But you just need to see it more consistently. And that's the one thing that we haven't really had from the Dynamo is a consistent goal scorer. Mind you, Ponce has only been here for half a season.
Yep.
But still has been more
Do you think he looks legit? Because I've had high hopes for him since he's coming into the league.
I think he's had his moments. I just don't. It's kind of hard to rate because of the fact that the wingers aren't necessarily the wingers that he would be having, and the big loss is Nelson Quiones, who tore his ACL before even the year started when he was representing Colombia. So you haven't really gotten your real winger. I mean, props to Ibrahim Aleyu. I give the tip of my hat to him just because of the fact that he has been playing well despite me being very critical, and I'm sure you've seen in our chats about how it does overwhelm me sometimes seeing him on the field. But at the end of the day, like, the wing play is also a very important part to the Dynamo. I mean, not just from the winger side, but for Griffin Dorsey and even Franco Escobar, for them to contribute on the wing it's a pretty part of the game, and I think that's why they brought Ponce in. Ponce is your quote unquote 9, the target man, and I think we haven't really got to see that part of the game just yet because of, I wouldn't say the wingers are terrible. Nothing against Bossi, nothing against Aleyu, but they're not the guys that you expect to be delivering those balls from the wings.
I don't think Seattle will not advance. No offense, Hector, but I do think we'll advance in this game. I just don't think it'll be as easy as people think. I would have liked if we got Minnesota. Obviously, that didn't happen. We got you guys, and I think this game will be a lot closer. I still do think it's a toss-up. As long as Seattle just don't lose the home games, I think they'll be okay. I mean, obviously, it's 2 of the games are at home. Win the 2 home games, you're good. You're through. So that's just my take. Do you have any final thoughts?
I think one of the arts, and I do say it's an art, is turning games ugly.
Okay.
If you can't win it pretty, which is Dynamo, I have never seen them win pretty. As far as I mean, even from the older years, like the years when they first came, the back-to-back MLS Cup championships, the phrase I would say that best represents Dynamo's blue collar. They've always just been very physical, just go in, clock in and get the job done kind of mentality the team's always had. I think this is a newer version of it, but I think hopefully somehow they can win over Houston. But I think the team is playing really well, and I can't wait for this matchup. I have my doubts. Actually, on the podcast, Insert Name FC, I was actually conflicted. I was like, my heart tells me to pick the Dynamo, but my brain tells me it's Seattle, and so it's one of those things where I'm just a flip of the coin, and even the coin flip is probably more accurate than I am at this point.
Yeah, I think as well, to add on to why you would say that is, like, I just don't see the Sounders flaming out in the first round. Like, I just can't see it as much as like you said, like,
And
what
I
were you
mean,
gonna
you
say?
can say the same thing for the Dynamo.
Really? You
Dynamo.
think so? I could see
Well,
Dynamo flaming out first round.
No, I mean, well, maybe the recent Dynamo, but I mean,
Yeah.
historically wise, the Dynamo have gone. I think the Dynamo have one of the highest winning percentages in
In the
MLS Cup playoffs.
Yeah, I believe
So,
that.
and I mean, Seattle, I'm sure, is very much up there. I think when these two teams are in, they go pretty far out. Obviously, I think when the Dynamo met Seattle, was that
The conference final.
yeah? So.
All right, case closed. Well, boys and girls, mine and Hector's opinion only matters so much. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. As I mentioned earlier on in the video, I will be doing a watch along for every single one of the matches for the Sounders in the playoffs. So the first 2 matches are already set. So make sure to click the bell notification so you're notified when I go live. That is the way to go. And then, boys and girls, I hope you'll have a lovely day.